In the 30th century, mankind has stretched out to the stars. One government controls most of their lives, a strong, militarized state known as the United Empire of Earth. This government, formed as an imperial despotism, now functions as a republic that holds the fate of trillions of human lives and over 35 star systems. Come with us as we learn more about the most powerful government in human history. This is Galactic Historian, UEE Government. Welcome to the universe of Star Citizen, a vast open world taking place over dozens of systems full of planets and moons, each with their own story and experience. The UEE controls the vast majority of systems that are dominated by humans in this universe, a massive democratic republic made up of states from multiple planets. To understand how this massive empire affects players in the universe, we need to understand its government systems, how they're laid out, and how they function. The legal head of state is known as the Imperator, an office created at the founding of the UEE in 2546 by Ivor Mezer. Initially, it was a hereditary title, passed down from Mezer to Mezer until the overthrow in 2792. The Imperator still signs off on all legislature, holds the office of High General, and is in charge of the legal system. However, the Imperators today are elected to office by the citizens of the UEE for a 10-year term of office. Although much weaker than their Mezer predecessors, the Imperator still has substantial power to make policy, but is much more reliant on the Senate to approve of his or her decisions involving the creation of laws. Next, let us look at how the rest of the government is organized. The major offices of the UEE are based on an old triumvirate system from the previous UPE, called the Tribunal, with the High General in charge of the military, the High Advocate in charge of the judicial system, and the High Secretary in charge of the infrastructure and practically the head of the legislature. Though the Imperator does hold the office of High General, they are still a higher rank than the other tribunal members. All of the tribunal are elected to office by the UEE citizen population. The High Advocate functions much like the modern U.S. Attorney General, though is also responsible for maintaining the court system as well. They control what's known as the advocacy, whose sole job is to maintain law and order in the empire. They do so with specialized agents, individual law enforcement officers often assigned to a single system, working alone to hunt down the worst criminals in the Empire. Agents are highly skilled investigators with the full authority of the Empire, authorized to ghost any suspect they looked for. Ghosting meaning kill or otherwise incapacitate. These agents almost always work alone, covering large areas of space with the help of local law enforcement and military forces. They also are the only authorized law enforcement to venture out of UEE space to capture dangerous criminals, either in lawless space or in alien territories. The sight of an advocacy agent is rare, and if you see one, they're probably hot on the trail of a dangerous fugitive. If you see multiple, it might be best to get out of the system before an all-out war breaks out, for you see, agents only work together if there's a danger too great for a single one to take on. However, it is far more common for the residents of the UEE to see local security forces patrolling and enforcing law for the advocacy. These security forces do not directly answer to the UEE, but to the companies and states that hire them. Though within the UEE borders, even they must yield to the authority of the agents of the advocacy. Next, we have the High Secretary, and their charge, the UEE Senate. The High Secretary's job is to maintain the infrastructure of the UEE, and in many ways is the internal political leader dealing with the daily issues of the government. They are the head of the Senate and involved in most of the lawmaking and decision processes of that body. From the funding of the military's latest dreadnought to keeping hospitals open on the frontier, the High Secretary is involved. Even though the High Secretary is in charge of the internal politics and the health of the UEE, it is the job of the senators from each represented system to echo the will of the citizens that elected them. Each represented planet is allotted at least one senator, with larger planets like Earth getting 5 senators. Each senator is elected to a 5-year term with no term limits. Together, they meet in the congressional chamber located in Seoul on Earth in the city of New York. In order to get representation in the Senate, a planet must reach a certain criteria, including value to the Empire and population size. Once they feel they should have representation in the Senate, they must petition the government. In order to become a represented planet in the UEE, the Senate and Imperator must sign off. This often requires a lot of political capital to ensure that the planet can elect their own senator. Even though humanity is dominant in the Empire, Many other species live in the UEE, including a subjugated species known as the Tavaran. There's a single Tavaran senator, a decorated Navy veteran of the Vandal War, named Suj Kosi, who represents the homeworld of the Tavaran, Elysium 4. Even 900 years in the future, political parties remain major forces in politics, with the three main parties of the UEE being the Universalist, Transitionalist, and Centralist. The Universalist Party believes that the government and the systems in place should lead the people and make decisions for them. The Transitionalist Party believes that people should decide their own fate and that of the government. The Centralist Party believes that humanity should embrace its past and maintain the status quo. These three parties spar over the fate of humanity, with the Centralist Party holding the most seats and the position of Senator pro tempore of the Senate. As such, the status quo is maintained, at least for the moment. Lastly, in this system, we have the High General. Though technically still held by the Imperator, the High General's main task is to ensure the military is operating at peak efficiency and commands the vast forces of the UEE military. However, the High General does not do this alone. Since the promotion of the High General to Imperator, a subcommittee of the military was created called the High Command. Each branch, Army, Navy, and Marines, has a representative called Legatus Exercitus, Legatus Navium, and Legatus Marinium, respectively. Together, the High Command makes most of the military decisions for the Empire, with some input from the Commander-in-Chief, the Imperator. Each role would be filled with high-ranking generals and admirals from each branch, and answer directly to the Imperator. The Legatus Exercitus is in charge of ground invasions and occupations with the army. Legatus Navium is in charge of patrolling the borders of the UEE space and dealing with piracy. And the Legatus Marinium is in charge of special operations and the delicate operations dealing with the most difficult targets in space and ground. While those are the main branches of the UEE government, others exist, even in the framework and territory of the Empire of Humanity, namely the Governor's Council. Each country, now known as a state, can elect a governor, who is in charge of the local population of that state. Governor is the highest rank a civilian can attain. Each planet has what is known as a Governor's Council, to make planetary law and deal with planet-wide issues of infrastructure, crime, employment, taxes, and so forth. As long as the Governor's Council does not directly contradict the UEE Senate, Tribunal, or the Imperator, each planet is left to its own devices as to how to run its internal matters. This brings up the last point, which is important to note, the difference between a civilian and a citizen in the UEE. Citizenship must be earned. This can be through civil service, military service, or some other service to the Empire specifically. In day-to-day life, a citizen and a civilian are no different. It is in the government where it matters. A citizen can vote for their governor, senator, members of the tribunal, and imperator, and they can also run for all of those offices. A civilian can only vote for and run for governor. Most are used to this system, seeing as planets have a lot of freedom to determine their own laws and fate, so not many complain. While it may be thought that this concept of citizenship based on service would be connected to the tyrannical measures as a means to disenfranchise dissenters, it actually has its roots way back into the first government of humanity, the UNE. With that spelled out, the question remains, how will this structure directly affect the average player of Star Citizen? Outside of the obvious interactions with the military and the advocacy, whether you're being pursued or given jobs, there is a lot of influence characters can have on the government and the government on the characters. The government's actions, be they decrees from the Imperator or laws passed by the Senate, will directly change the in-game story. Your choices will further decide the direction the government will go down, giving power to individuals or parties, flipping control of entire star systems, or even toppling planetary governments altogether. There is even the possibility that players could get elected as senators to the UEE. The government involvement in the story and the average player experience is greater than any other in-fiction government in any online game I personally have ever played. This has been the UEE government. If you want to learn more about this and other topics, check out the lecture series or historical questions for more focused and specific answers to questions about this and other universes. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified about each new video of Galactic Historian. As always, here at Galactic Historian, we hope to see you again soon. If not, we hope to see you someday in the black.